Hello and welcome to the Bucket Bros, everybody. My name is Ronnie West. That, whichever way I'm pointing, is Mr. Bobby Marsico. He's got his ball. He's ready to play. This is the Bucket Bros. Welcome in, everybody. Whew. The trade deadline has passed. How are we feeling? How are you feeling, buddy?
Well, good evening, everybody. I mean, I feel great right now. I'm not on. Oh, there you go. There you go. We can pass the rock while we're shooting the breeze.
Here we go.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not on death's door like I was last week, so maybe I'll have a little pep in my step this year. Definitely a wild ride through the course of leading up to the trade deadline. Rather, deadline week. I mean, it's basically like a holiday in the NBA. Um, just before All-Star week. But yeah, a little bit more excitement than we anticipated. You know, everybody was talking it down with the rule changes and such, but we got some action. So we were gonna jump into it and cover some of that with sort of the through the lens of who do we think that the winners were for this year's trade deadline, and specifically who do we think got better for this season. So when we're going down our little list here, and I kind of made my little list. You feel that free to jump in as much as often you want with whatever teams you feel like need their story to be told. But yeah, the idea for this list was essentially like who do we think after the trade deadline became a better team to close the season, a better playoff team. So we're not necessarily just mentioning who do we think are the best teams in the league.
Yeah, no, I think going off of your list, I will rebut whatever I feel doesn't make sense to me. But yeah, let's get started. Let's get into this fast break news. Winners and losers of the trade deadline. Let's go.
All right. Well, starting things off. Since we're recording this, how many days has it been since the end of the trade deadline? About 5 days now. There has been a little bit of action. You know, a lot of these guys have made their debut for their new team already. So we kind of have to take some of that into context a little bit. We're not starting fresh here. So with that, we are gonna. I feel like the first team I have to mention is going to be the Mavs. I mean, it's probably the first team I was going to mention either way, but I was probably going to spin them in just purely a positive light initially. Obviously, Mavericks fans, I gotta say, welcome.
I've got a few Mavs friends that are on the ledge, and they need you to be talked off. I'm going to send this to them. Please tell them why they should be happy about anything that's gone on.
Well, I mean, this is the Anthony Davis experience. You guys are being flooded with it right from the get-go. I will say, given the fact that it's not like a season-ending injury, I'm going to stay positive on this. So we will start with the Mavs. I do think that they got better after the trade deadline, and primarily for this season, especially with the acquisition of AD. Again, not thinking long-term, not thinking 5 years from now, not thinking 10 years from now, which even, are a lot of Mavs fans.
You're saying even in this season, losing a top 3 scorer, they're better.
Well, let's think about this. So, we all know they acquired AD and Max Christie. Okay, so they added depth to their roster. They still have star power. They still have a lot of offensive options, and they're a team that was already towards the bottom of like the playoff play-in picture in the standings, because in large part Luka has been hurt such a large portion of the season with this recurrent calf strain. And I mean, obviously he's returned, so we would have expected him to return around this time as well. But that doesn't take away the fact that the Mavs have been struggling, have been losing a lot of their games without him. And so with his return, I feel like, especially with how well they did last year, making it to the finals, expectations would have been high, and he would have been expected to ramp up pretty quickly and be, like essentially, major force Luka over here, trying to bring them back into the playoff picture. And I think that obviously you can't float around too much in the hypotheticals, but I think that would have certainly increased his risk of re-injuring the calf. And just in general, the Mavs just really haven't had the season that we expected out of them, especially with the acquisition of Klay Thompson. So now they have, like I said, more depth. They are a faster paced team. I think they did well both in defense and shooting. And I mean, right off the bat, that first half against the Rockets, who were granted a little bit depleted with, Jabari Smith Jr. has been out for a little bit. And then, and during their 6-game losing streak, they also didn't have Fred VanVleet for 3 of those games. I guess you can argue too that matchup-wise, that was a pretty good matchup for the Mavs to get with AD right off the bat. But I mean, he arguably played like the best first half of his career. He put up a stat line that, I forgot what it was exactly. It was like 24 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, blah blah blah. That essentially had never been done before. So it's unfortunate that he had a non-contact groin strain late in the third quarter. I mean, just out of nowhere. I mean, he was just moving laterally to his right, and all of a sudden, like a ghost kicked him in the crotch.
As I texted you, classic AD. Like that's just, he's like a paper guy that I made out of paper, and all of a sudden, something falls over and he's out for 3.5 weeks. It's just kind of par for the course.
Yeah, less than ideal, I will say. I mean, he'll be reevaluated in a few weeks, and I guess the Mavs are fortunate that it happened right before All-Star break, so that'll help break up his recovery period a little bit. But, he's still expected to play majority of games down the stretch, hoping that the Mavs can keep themselves, above water here until he does return, because they're going to need every win they can get as they continue to slide. But that said, when healthy, I think the Mavs have created themselves again. Obviously, defensively, they're a little bit better. I think they're going to play with better pace, and ultimately, especially with the way Max Christie's coming out, looking really confident. I think in general they got better shooting. So again, this is not a long-term projection. This is, I mean, the Mavs essentially gave themselves like a 2-year window, and you can argue that this is one of those years. So I still don't think it was like a smart trade for long-term. We'll see how that plays out. But I really do like what the squad is to close this season.
All right. We'll have to see how it goes. I'm curious, like you said, just long-term wise, thinking about like when we do have to think about it long-term wise, of them getting like essentially no future picks in return. And it's funny, I found this pick of Kevin Durant and how his impact on the Nets, and how, excuse my search here for a second. I know it's close, so it'll come up as long as the internet's. But the Nets turned a 34-year-old Kevin Durant into Cam Johnson, Zaire Williams, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 picks for Kevin Durant. And yet here we sit.
That's the way it's done, right? That's the way it's done.
Yeah. And even like we mentioned in the last episode of me being a Timberwolves fan, it's just like hands in the air of like Gobert went for 4 picks, and here essentially it was a pick swap with the Lakers. And it's like, yes, AD is a tremendous talent, and obviously he put that on display, but everybody knew going in that he's a box of cards that could all of a sudden crumble at any moment. So that was kind of the risk that I think the Lakers were trying to get out of in doing this trade. But in the same breath, Luka could go out and do the same thing in 2 or 3 games time. So we'll just have to see what happens here over the next few weeks. And hopefully Davis gets healthy. And like you said, it'll be nice to see the Mavericks at full throttle. And it'll be interesting to see as they sit in the A spot, 2 games above 500. So, yeah, it'll be curious to see what happens.
For sure. Do you want to jump into the next one then?
Yeah, I'll let you be the point guard on this.
Okay. Well,
so yeah, I approve of them being a winner. I think, like you said, if we're only talking about on court, then yes, I'll give it an approval. If we're not looking at long term,
it's a very important to think short term. Who is better this year, right? Who do I think gave themselves better postseason chances this year? We're just gonna leave it at that because I mean we could go back into the trade and dissect it, and
sometimes it gets a bubble of thumbs up. I don't know.
Okay.
Don't mind me.
I look forward to that after the editing.
It'll be there. It's fine.
Yeah, but we can dissect that trade all day long just because of how monumental and arguably absurd it was. But listen, let's just focus on what the Mavs look like right now because you can't take it back. Luka didn't fail his physical like Mark Williams did. We'll get into that later. But could you imagine if Lakers nah. But anyway,
give us back AD, and then he goes down. Like that would be classic.
At any rate, well, hopefully, hopefully, happy healing AD. I look forward to seeing what this Mavs squad can actually do for more than 3 quarters. All right, so I guess we'll get into a team. So one team that at the top of the standing, pretty much the one team at the top of the standings that actually made a big move was the Cleveland Cavaliers, who picked up DeAndre Hunter. In order to do that, they had to get off Karis LeVert, Georges Niang, and handful of picks. But overall, I think great move for them. I think this is a move that's kind of been hanging out in the background for this squad for the past few seasons now. I mean, before we were thinking about them as the number 1 team in the East, these past couple of years, we were thinking everybody, the big talk was like, what are the Cavs going to do at the 3 spot? Like that's where they're really thin is the wing position. And I even said, I don't know if you remember, but early in one of our podcasts when the Cavs were taking off and seemed to be beating everybody, that I just was trying to extrapolate this into a playoff picture and just couldn't picture Georges Niang. I love the guy, but couldn't picture Georges Niang trying to have to guard Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum for an entire series. And well, they solved that problem. They got rid of Niang. I hate that they got rid of LeVert in order to make this happen. But they bought on DeAndre Hunter when his value was probably the highest it's ever been. As I'm sure you know, DeAndre Hunter is the highest scoring player off the bench this year. He's averaging about 18 a season. He's having, I believe, the best 3-point shooting season he's had ever. I still wouldn't think of him as like a super high level defender or rebounder, but he brings a lot of positional size, and I think that's kind of the role that they're going to have to squeeze him into. They're going to probably try to squeeze every last defensive drop that they can out of him for the remainder of the season and the postseason. But yeah, I mean, overall, I think very favorable pickup for the Cavs. He looked pretty decent in his debut. I don't have the stats pulled up in front of me, but yeah, seemed to flow pretty well with that squad. They got bigger and more athletic, and that's going to be a little bit scarier come playoff time.
Yeah, having only seen a little bit, obviously He's only probably played 2 or 3 games for them. But watching the Cavs beat the Timberwolves last night, he definitely had some big shots and seemed to just kind of fit right into their offense and just seemed to be a great fit to that team. So, no, I agree. I think this is a good for, like you said, I think Karis LeVert to me is kind of the big negative to the trade, but he always felt like a piece that was probably going to get moved to get better. And like you said, I think having that high level defender is going to make that Cavs team even more dangerous come May, June. So I agree. I give you a thumbs up on that one as a winner.
Yeah. And with Karis LeVert, like secondary ball handler, really good at penetrating the lane, but at the end of the day, they have 2 primary ball handlers in their starting lineup, and now they got Ty Jerome really popping this year coming off the bench. So, I don't think that they're necessarily going to be missing too much in that regard. He did get the start last night because Isaac Okoro, or I'm sorry, was it Dean Wade and Max Strus were both out. Who's so I think at like the 3-4 spot they're doing really, really well right now. But anyway, we can move on. And do you want to pick the next one, or do you just want me to keep rolling?
No, I like where you're going. I have comments to mention off of this one, so please, by all means, like I said, continue on. I think this is a solid way to go.
All right. So for this next one, I could easily make arguments for and arguments against this pick, but I'm going with the over, and I'm picking the Warriors, who picked up Jimmy G buckets. In order to do that, they had to get off of Andrew Wiggins, Kyle Anderson. I believe in a separate deal. I don't have all the deals in front of me. They also got rid of Dennis Schroeder and Lindy Waters.
Dennis Schroeder was traded 5 times over the deadline, or was on 5 different teams in the span of like 2.5 days, which I thought was hilarious. So, but he's one of those guys that he's so good, he's always tradable. So, but yeah, I thought that was funny. Him and PJ Tucker was another one. He was on 3 different teams in 2 days. So these guys kind of bounce around, and like you said, it is
PJ Tucker, who hasn't played an NBA game this season, not a one.
Yeah.
I don't even know why he fills an NBA roster spot this year. Blows my mind.
Good for him making that paper.
I guess maybe he's just like a really good locker room guy or something. But he's not playing, and I don't see him helping anybody out. Anytime anybody has mentioned him in trade talks, is like, and they got PJ Tucker, maybe he can fill some minutes at the 4 for them. He hasn't played a game this season. He's 39 years old. What are we doing here?
Mm-hmm. All right.
I
just thought it was funny with Schroeder being on, like, he went from the Warriors to the Heat to the Jazz, and then went somewhere else at the end, I think is where he's even working out a buyout. So he could end up on another team.
It's a shame because, in the right situation, I really do like watching Dennis Schroeder. Obviously, pick and roll players, as I've heard it. What was it? The Thinking Basketball podcast. Pick and roll player, or the Golden State Warriors is where pick and roll players go to die. Was one of the better quotes I've heard, and it plays out really, really well because they do. It's just not something. It's not a style of play that they have.
True.
Or that they excel at. But anyway, I think I was able to convince myself that overall I like Jimmy Butler as a part of the squad. You're replacing Wiggins essentially with more defense, better basketball IQ. Unfortunately for the Warriors, this is an absurd statement to make, but they lose shooting by getting rid of Andrew Wiggins, which I don't think is a sentence anybody has ever spoken ever, but it's true.
Yeah, no. As a Timberwolves
They,
fan, having watched him grow, that's a tremendous statement to say.
but I mean, they get kind of like another point forward guy who is proven in the playoffs. Because of all his protests, his not so silent protests this year. I think he's been able to preserve his body a little bit. So I actually kind of like his health coming down the stretch here for a guy who's been, kind of injury prone. And he's 35, not to mention. But no, I think he's going to get to the line, which is something that the Warriors haven't had virtually ever. I mean, maybe Kevin Durant, but even he's not like a high percentage free throw shooter for the volume of scoring that he brings because he's a jump shooter. And I think that that's going to add a lot to their offense during those stagnant moments that we see over and over and over again that causes them to lose down the stretch of games. And it's just another guy you don't want to run into setting a pickoff ball for Steph.
Yeah.
It's just an extra set of eyes. It's that extra hockey pass.
It's a, like I mentioned to you, it's that wily old set of veterans at the gym that's gonna like run up the score on guys that aren't expecting them with the three of them, and they've got youth around them. So yeah, I feel like they're a team that can scare some teams depending on if they get some. I'm not sure if they got a rim protector, but if Draymond's supposedly supposed to be that, then they're going to get eaten up inside. So, but to kind of follow up on that, I one of the funny comments that I've seen that would be very curious now, especially with him on the Warriors, was did they do the starting five a year too early? Like here's Anthony Edwards post Carl Anthony Towns trade, Sabonis dealing with all of the stuff that going on with the Kings, firing Mike Brown. You're going to have the Celtics and Jaylen Brown kind of doing the same thing. That would kind of pretty much be the same. But you got the Jimmy Butler saga going on. And then I'm forgetting the other player. I forget the other last one. But yeah, just the way that it was set up, it was like it'd be so much better storylines around them this season if they did that. So I know there's a whole new set coming out this next season. So it's just interesting to kind of see how that kind of played out. But no, I'll let you continue. I definitely agree with the next one for sure.
All right. Well, I mean, I don't need to talk too much more on the Warriors. They have looked good for, I think, what they've already gotten a couple wins. One which was really bizarre. Give up a huge lead and then come from behind in the same quarter against the Bulls for the first game, and then I can't remember who else they played, but yeah, they've given them a couple of wins thus far, and I mean a lot of just like high level cuts by Jimmy, and damn well Draymond loves it. He's just looking for him every time. So Portland, sorry, they had a very decisive win against Portland after. Oh, I'm sorry. Here, I'm looking at this backwards. I'm very much looking at the schedule in reverse. Milwaukee. I'm sorry, against Milwaukee. But anyway, so we can move on here, and you want me to just go down the list as it's mentioned?
Yeah.
Or as it's written? Okay. Well, I certainly think, and I know that we talked about this when we talked about the trade during our last episode, that the San Antonio Spurs are a winner after from this trade deadline. They picked up De'Aaron Fox. As we went into great detail, they did not have to give up much in terms of what they had available to get him. Facilitated by the Bulls for ancestral reasons I have yet to understand. And, I know that I believe they've played 3 games and have only won one of them thus far with De'Aaron Fox in the lineup. But, I mean, I'm talking, we're trying to think ahead, but not too far ahead, right? So I'm thinking about, all the, what does it come out to be? 27 games or so left in the season. And And I really already like what I'm seeing. Obviously, De'Aaron Fox, we know, plays with a lot of pace, something that the Spurs, with the young team are already kind of good at. But just to have like this extra go-to offensive option, a guy who I'm really looking forward to develop some chemistry with Wemby, hopefully by the end of this year, and also just hell of a clutch player. Let's see. Which loss was it that they had? It was
The
the
first
second game.
one, was it the second?
Am I getting them backwards? But oh yeah, you're right. You're right. It was the first game against the Hornets, and I mean right off the bat. I mean why they were so close in this game against the Hornets to start with. We can get into that, but De'Aaron Fox just huge bucket after huge bucket down the stretch, including a 3-pointer that just barely left his hands too late, which would have won them the game.
Oh, yeah. And a close game against the Magic, too. So they've been in these games. They're a fun team to watch. I think you mentioned, too, it's not only the chemistry with Wemby, it's the chemistry with Castle. These other young guys, I think, just to me, they're going to feed off each other and whatever he can learn and sponge off of Chris Paul as well. I think, like him or hate him, he's still going to goes down as one of the greatest point guards. So anytime that you can get around them, learn little tricks, learn different things, nuances of whether it's a pick and roll or just how somebody's moving or fading, I think those are all things that can benefit his game too. So yeah, to me, I love this trade, even though they sit, 12th right now in the West. So it's pretty nuts to think that there's 13 teams that have a chance. Somebody was saying like the play-in tournament's going to be like get your popcorn ready because that tournament is going to be insane, much less just the regular playoffs in general, just because it's going to be that single elimination and it's going to be hyped, and I'm sure my Timberwolves will be in the middle of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, the San Antonio Spurs got to make it into the play-in tournament first. They're 3 games back currently from the 10-spot Warriors, tied with the Kings. Now, I'm definitely looking forward to the game tomorrow when they play the Celtics. Probably won't do well for the De'Aaron Fox San Antonio Spurs win-loss record to start things off, but you never know. Ultimately, if this squad can kind of hit their stride for a stretch of games, we might very well find them back in playing contention. And obviously excited for next year too, on top of it. But just talking about this year, try to stay focused. Still think overall better team coming down the stretch.
Yep, agreed. So far, I'm gonna debate one eventually here, so we'll see.
I'm giving you a lot of gimmies. I think it gets a little bit fun on this next one because I even put a question mark next to it. But I'm gonna throw them in, and just as an NBA fan, this is a tough one. It pulls the heartstrings a little bit. But the Milwaukee Bucks, who ended up trading Chris Middleton essentially to get Kyle Kuzma, they were also able to get Jericho Sims before the deadline. And I can imagine that one wasn't tough for Bucks front office, for fans. The writing's kind of been on the wall for Chris Middleton on this Bucks squad. We've been talking about him as a potential trade candidate for years now. It's kind of interesting that they chose this season of all the previous years. I feel like perhaps I don't know, maybe they were holding on to him a little bit too much, like a fan was, like waiting for the Chris Middleton of old to pop back out again in playoff situations. And don't get me wrong. He has carried that offense a number of times, especially last year's playoffs when they needed him to, with Giannis being injured. So it's not that he hasn't shown up, but after post racking up the injuries, just not quite the same guy that he was. Not a bad player still, but just not quite the same guy that he was. And kind of the way that Klay Thompson just like couldn't fill the same shoes defensively anymore. We were kind of seeing the same thing with Chris Middleton, in which case, if you have a guy who's a wing player, who's really good offensively, but functions as like a 4 defensively, then you're just not getting the same punch out of them that they used to. So that said, they have Kyle Kuzma, who I have always had mixed feelings about. I think I went on a rant early in one of our early podcasts about how he's just gonna stay in DC forever, just make another 4-year contract after another 4-year contract as long as they're going to pay him.
No, he's told his mom he's going to the Midwest and gonna do right and get a championship. So
yeah, you wanted to see what real snow feels like. But yeah, I mean, so Kuzma, he positionally has a lot of size and athleticism. Granted, it's hard not to think of him as like Washington Wizards Kuzma, because not the best structure to base a guy's game off of. I mean,
I always assume he's a Laker.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, if you were a casual NBA fan and just kind of like blinked your eyes after that championship that he won in LA, you would forget that he was even in the league, just because he's just been hanging on the Wizards for a number of years now. And shot selection hasn't always been there. I feel like defensively, like awareness, you don't always like what you see. Again, I don't know if it's just situational. If in the right setting, we may see a different version of Kyle Kuzma, and I hope that that's the case.
What's funny is that I wish he could have played with Chris Middleton. I feel like he's the veteran leader that he needs to kind of guide him in the next like 3 to 4 years. Granted, you're going to get some of that with Giannis, but he's still he seems like a goofball, and there's rumors that he wants to play in a major market. Like he made comments about like that's his dream, that all the big stars are in major markets. And so like, who knows what his plans are in the next few years. But to me, it's a good fit if he can keep his head on straight. It's more like seems to be like an immature kid, which is funny with him and Jordan Poole, that both kind of have gotten that moniker, whether it's true or not. And you kind of, we'll throw them in DC and no one will know what they're doing, and they can kind of goof around and play and be on a bad team and no one will really care. But now here's your opportunity to play on a playoff team to kind of show what you're worth. Like you mentioned before, he was relevant with the Lakers. Can you kind of repeat that and be a really solid role player on a team that has a chance with 2 superstars to make a difference in the playoffs? And so, and to be that third optional scorer that when, for whatever reason, defenses lock down one of the other 2, that you're available to, whether it's coming off the bench or however your role fits, that you're like an instant offense guy. So to me, I think there's potential. It's just, can he fit into the system that's going to make the most sense? So to me, this is I'm unsure. I'm on the fence. To me, I wouldn't give it a yay or nay. To me, I'm fairly neutral on this one. I don't feel like they got better, if that's the question here at the end of the day. I would say no. I don't think they got better. I think they got younger. And does that benefit them in the long term? Maybe. But like you said, the parameters of this question was for this season. Do I think that they're a better team? I don't think so. So I'm going to give you a no.
Hey, fair enough. And I think potential was definitely the right word that you threw out. Hoping that he finds his shot a little bit better to close the season. Hopefully boost that average a little bit closer to league average. But I mean, I just think defensively he could offer them a little bit more if he's the Kyle Kuzma that we hope he can be. So I was willing to give the Bucks the thumbs up, just because of, I mean, let's be real, because of Giannis and because of the expectations for the squad this year. So we shall see. but and you know what? And in general, I like that they assuming that I'm not incorrect on this still. I was going off of a source that showed me the collection of changes that were made a few days up until a few days ago. Okay, yes, Jericho Sims. Jericho Sims, I feel like was another good pickup for them for some center depth. He he obviously had a decent role with the Knicks thus far this season, just because they've had so many injuries at the center position, and he's just he's a little undersized for a center, but just really high energy guy. I think he's going to give them some solid minutes. So that was kind of a nice little booster as well. Certainly not a pickup that's going to make or break your playoff hopes, but yeah. Anyway, just wanted to add that in. So,
yeah, I'm glad you did, because I didn't know much about the rest of who came over in that deal. So thank you.
So one team I want to mention, it doesn't quite fit the prompt, and you'll know why very soon. But the Toronto Raptors, who were able to acquire Brandon Ingram in a trade, and have already since signed him to a 3-year, $120 million extension. He got an extension that a lot of teams were not willing to pay him. Essentially, the Fred VanVleet extension that he got last summer with the Rockets. I do think, though, that I don't know. There's just something about the Rockets and them acquiring lengthy wing players that when they get another one, there's just something in me. The NBA fan in me just starts tingling a little bit, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I mean, the Raptors are really good at having like sub all-star lengthy players, like a bunch of guys who are just like 6'8", or like 6'7" to 6'9". Yeah, well, I mean that's
where it started.
Definitely that's a nice throwback example, but I mean they have like just thrived over the past like 6 years or so on rosters that are like a bunch of guys who are like 6'7" to 6'9". It's just sort of a not one particular player is really good at one thing, but everybody's just kind of good at everything. Obviously, Brandon Ingram is he's a good offensive player. I wouldn't call him an elite offensive player. I am kind of curious to see how he's going to pair up with the rest of the squad. I do find it in particular, Scotty Barnes. I do find it kind of interesting that they signed him to this extension, which will make them a fairly expensive team next year. They got Scotty Barnes, rookie max extension, the fun max, if you will, kicking in next year at $38 million. And then so Brandon Ingram will be, I don't actually know how the contract tapers, or if it does at all, or if it's just 40, but Brandon Ingram will be the highest or second highest paid player on that team. Emmanuel Quickley's going into the second year of his contract. He's getting paid $32.5. RJ Barrett, second year of his extension, he's at $27 million. Assuming that they still have Jakob Poeltl on the lineup, he's getting paid $19.5. So once they fill out that roster, we're talking like luxury tax team, who, by the way, is currently 16-37 in the standings. I'm going to assume that they're trying to take a turn towards winning next year. I know it doesn't quite fit the prompt, but I wanted to mention it because
you said
it
the prompt was
like
this year, and you put
no,
it
I know. I certainly don't think that they're going to go on like a 20-game win streak and make their way into the play-in or anything this year. I think that they're too far away. Maybe if they were a little bit closer to 500, I would, with what the back end of the East looks like. But no, I had to mention them as like Ronnie's bringing the thumbs down. Thumbs down and zooming in for those who aren't
Siskel
watching.
and Ebert thumbs down right now. 2 thumbs down.
But
as much as I'm sitting here giggling about Dick and Ingram jokes, of trying to figure out a way to work those in.
Yeah.
I can't.
No, but I had to mention them because I like the well-roundedness of this roster. I feel like if they were in a little bit better of a place in the standings right now, that I would be talking. I would be talking the over on them to close the season.
How much
And they're all
worse
just
would they be in the West, though? Like, imagine them trying to play in the West. Like, this is a team I tried to get on board with at the beginning of the season, and there was multiple episodes where like this is a good team. Like, there's something there. Same with the Nets. Granted, the Nets, they disemboweled their team from within, but this is like the same Raptors team. Granted, they've dealt with a few injuries, but they're so inconsistent. How, like, they just got another inconsistent player. Like, yeah, he can shoot a little bit better than the rest of them, but like they're all the same. Like, they're going to be, maybe if their streakiness lines up correctly, they might get on a win streak. But yeah, to me, I like him as a player. I don't prove me wrong. I don't see it.
And that's what a lot of teams. That's what a lot of teams, feel like. That's why he's kind of been on the trade block for the past 2 years now. Is because you're like, where does he fit? But now that the Raptors have him, I'm thinking right here. This is where he fits in Toronto.
All right.
But no, that's it. You know what I think it is the Raptors like to live in this. Ever since 2019, they like to live in this world where we're just one Kawhi Leonard away from making another title run. Yeah. And so they like to stack their team with a lot of talent and like a lot of like desirable NBA players, but like a team that can't actually win a lot of games. But then we'll eventually make a bunch of shiny pieces that will eventually make that big trade where they borrow a Kawhi Leonard for a year and make another title run. But anyway, so sorry to get off topic, get off the prompt a little bit. Those were all my my winners for the trade deadline that I compiled. So we could. It's interesting how we could jump into this one because I kind of already see where you're going to disagree with me, and I can name that team first, or we can build up to it a little bit.
However you want to work it. I've got stuff in the chamber ready.
So we're in the not category now, and
losers.
One team, the losers. Yeah, one team that I'm going to bring up that we bring up a lot on this show. We'll lead off with them is the Memphis Grizzlies, who did not acquire really anything to add to their roster for the trade deadline. Rather, they seemed very focused on getting off of Marcus Smart and his contract. They kind of took advantage of the trade deadline for that reason, and essentially that reason alone. You kind of hear a lot of people saying that they're sort of playing scared. They're just kind of trying to focus on what they have as opposed to building around that even further, which is kind of a weird place to be for a team that has a lot that they can throw together in a trade package and just a really good squad that's kind of missing that one piece, right? For putting them over the hump to be more than just like a 50-something win team, just a 50-something win team, right? That said, they did have to give up 2 picks to get Marcus Smart, which seemed like an okay move at the time. I was kind of high on it because I thought, yeah, you could pair a guy like that next to Ja Morant, especially if he plays the way he did in Boston. Well, he did not. And it didn't look like that was ever going to turn around. And so now they had to get off another first-round pick to get off of him. So Marcus Smart cost them 3 first-round picks. So I could kind of see why they would be playing scared a little bit. What I don't like is, in what I believe is another money management move, they also gave up Jake LaRavia for a song and a shoe shine. He's one of their players. I mean, he's not a perfect player, no, but he's yet another one of their young players who they've drafted and cultivated well, which is what they do. They draft and develop. They don't hit 100% of the time, but the ones that they have, it's showed up pretty nicely and continues to hit. So, I mean, I think maybe they're just trying to alleviate some roster congestion, and again, we're worried about what their cap sheet was going to look like in years to come. So I did not like that move. I did not like what they did. They did not get better. If anything, you could say they may have even gotten a little bit worse. We'll see if maybe they're just kind of holding out for this offseason or next deadline. Maybe there's something in the works there, something's rumbling, and they actually are about to make that next big move. I hope that that's the case. Or they could just continue to build from within and be a really good team in the West, which is great, which is a great thing to be. But yeah, I just waiting to see the Grizzlies try to get over that hump, and they didn't accomplish that.
Yeah, I can't argue against anything. To me, I haven't done enough research on what the Grizzlies got back. I think that's probably the bigger thing. But otherwise,
I'm I can pull it up for you.
Well,
I could pull it up for you. I can give you some of the highlights. Let me tell you, one of them is Marvin Bagley.
Junior or senior?
the third, I believe. Oh, that's hilarious.
Yes.
Well played, sir. Well played. Well played. I mean, assuming that this hasn't changed in the buyout market yet, the collection of what they ended up getting was Marvin Bagley, Jr., Johnny Davis, who does sound like the lead singer of Albert. Oh, I'm sorry, you guys. It's late here. Yeah, in a couple seconds. So they legitimately added just about nothing to their roster.
Okay.
Again, they're thinking about the future here with these moves, but it's got to bother you because especially since Jaren Jackson Jr. is playing so well this year.
No, yeah, I was just gonna say it's whether they're happy with the team they got, because I'm sitting here watching them beat up on a Phoenix team right now, as I'm sure you're watching as well, and they're sitting second in the West, so maybe they're just kind of happy and they're going to sit on what they've got and pull it together. I'm going to lose it again. So I can understand why they would just kind of stand put and kind of see how this season plays out and then move forward. So I can't argue against. I guess I'm going to give you a side. What's going on? You're dying of a coughing fit over here. Get some water.
Yeah.
I already had that earlier.
I'm at the end of my tea here. I had to mute that one for you guys. I still don't know if you were serious about that or not. But anyway, we're moving on. Okay, so this is probably I feel like this is where we're gonna fight the most. In my losers category, the next team I put, you may notice that I haven't mentioned them yet, is the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, yes,
what?
They picked up
a team that's won 6 straight.
They picked up Luka Doncic. You cannot say that that's ever a bad trade when you pick up a guy who's a top 3 MVP candidate every year, who's 25, going on 26. But again, we're looking for this season, and last I checked, the Lakers essentially depleted. They're already somewhat thin center depth and their defense in order to get him. And the trade where they unloaded essentially the rest of the assets that they could to get Mark Williams obviously was rescinded for some mystery failed physical reason. So now they don't have a starting caliber center. They have a lot of like ball dominant guys on the roster, and they don't have a good defense. I don't know who they're guarding. The ball's going to move around. In fact, in Luka's first game with the Lakers, it looked like an all-star game out there, just like a very nonchalant ball flying around. It was kind of awesome. I mean, don't get me wrong. It was a lot of fun to watch. but I just don't see how that's going to help you in the playoffs when teams are locking down on everybody. When Oklahoma City can take Luka on one-on-one, what are you going to do if you're the Lakers? The ball's not going to be moving the same way it did last night. So, that said, they did pick up Alex Len as a backup center, and leave it to Luka, especially with LeBron, to make. Oh, excuse me, guys. To make. I'm still getting over this. Leave it to Luka and LeBron to make the likes of. I'm blanking on the name right now. Jackson Hayes look like the best lob threat. But anyway, that's fantastic. But anyway, going back to my point, we're talking about teams that got better, specifically as playoff contenders for the end of this year. And the Lakers, who are currently sitting in fourth place, tied in the loss column with the Denver Nuggets. That's excellent. For those who are not watching at home, Ronnie decided to play a video that highlights how LeBron is the only player in NBA history to airball a free throw in 3 different decades. He's also the youngest and oldest player to score 40 points. So a lot of impressive stats that LeBron is throwing up with his longevity. So anyway, so I mean, I like the Lakers' future. I think that they, especially now that they had to back out of a trade that essentially got rid of everything else that they were able to trade left. I mean, they're going to have more options perhaps this summer. But yeah, I mean, this year, I don't like how they match up against any of the heavy hitters in the West. Anyway, I think I've been talking and freezing and doing all sorts of things long enough on this topic.
No, I can understand where you're coming from, but yeah, the reason when you brought this up, I questioned it and was like, "What? This doesn't make any sense." And I get where you're coming from, but I still would have to disagree and say that they were on the winning side when you get a talent like Luka, when LeBron's playing very well as they kind of are going on this win streak as well, and they're getting dudes off the bench. There was a guy, I already forgot his name, who scored double digits the last 2 games, like the last guy on the bench. So whether it's they're playing these games and blowing teams out, and guys are getting garbage time minutes, that's good for the Lakers. And more guys on the floor. So to me, I think the Lakers are headed in the right direction. I'm disappointed that the Mark Williams trade didn't go through. I think that would have been very interesting to see kind of how he would have fit with that team, because that kind of would have been a healthy version of him, I think, is what would fill the need that I think you keep talking about, that they need that rim protector and someone who's athletic that can get in there. And so I think it's disappointing that trade kind of fell through. So, because then I would be sitting here yelling and screaming at you if you had him on the loser side.
That may have changed my mind. It may have changed my mind. I didn't like that they were trying to get rid of Dalton Connect in order to make the trade happen. But even then, like the backcourt perimeter defense would be a little thin. So it's questionable. But I don't know. They're going to have more options this offseason, and certainly outlook is not grim for the Lakers.
Ooh,
we'll see. We'll see. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say one last note on the Lakers. It's a funny one that we had talked about this before, but the off the court. But Bronny James jersey sales have brought in the Lakers $50 million. So whether you think that second round pick was a throwaway pick, that pick brought the Lakers in jersey sales alone $50 million. So,
Yeah, think about what his contract was versus what the Lakers have made off of it.
yeah.
It sounds like a wing and investment to me. All right. Well, moving down the line, and we don't have to linger on these too long, but just I think by the very nature of how this all played out leading up to the trade deadline being one of the big headlines that we had to hear about over and over and over again. Poor Miami Heat. I'm throwing them in the losers column. They've been a competitive team for a handful of seasons now. They've made the two Cinderella story finals runs, and they got Andrew Wiggins in the trade that sent out Jimmy Butler. They didn't really get a lot in terms of draft capital. They were able to get Kyle Anderson as well, so it's kind of like you call it 3/4 on a dollar or 4/4 on a dollar, if you will, for this team who is still sitting seventh, one game under 500 in the East. So, I certainly think they'll be in the mix still. I don't think they're trying to lose games, but kind of an unfortunate end to the season for the Heat. Who knows? Maybe they really take off and steal a spot in the standings from like the Pistons or something. But yeah,
No,
I
I
don't know.
think
Do
you're
you have
right.
any comments on the Heat?
I
Or
think
go
that
ahead.
they're definitely in the loser column. This the way that the whole thing panned out. They were obviously in a position of needing to move Jimmy. I think at least getting Wiggins was something, but obviously to me it's you get slightly younger, but just having Wiggins has definitely gotten better while being in Golden State. So it'll be curious to see. I think he can kind of fit that Miami Heat mold. So he fits the culture, but to me, I just think it is a downgrade to know that night in, night out that he's going to put up 20 points is fine. But I think there's just the leadership aspects and kind of and granted, they were both
The
much younger.
defensive
And
versatility, the
yeah,
ability to close games and
I
lead
would
a
say,
team
and I'm
down
being a
down the
Timberwolf
stretch.
homer. Being a Timberwolf homer, it's and granted Wiggins was still young, but it's like he was there for so long and couldn't really do anything. And then like
Do you think
Jimmy's
when
there.
Jimmy played with Wiggins in Minnesota that he would have defined him as Heat culture? Or kind of seems like that's maybe a new development if you're saying that.
Well, yeah, I definitely think he's a totally different player than he was from the Timberwolves to
That's
Miami
fair.
Heat version of Wiggins. His development with the Warriors and seeing like because that's the thing too. It's when you're around someone great. Like he got the tail end of KG, and then he got Jimmy. Like and Jimmy's blow up in Minnesota. So it's not like he really saw greatness up until that point. Like an aging KG that came in at the end is one thing, and so from there it's like okay, but seeing Steph on a day-to-day basis, seeing the work ethic, seeing what needs to be done. And it's funny because I was excited seeing him and Zach Lavine like working out together, but it's like you look at both of their career trajectories, it's like they were shooters, not like defensive liabilities. And to me, it's Wiggins has definitely gotten better on the defensive end versus what he was as a Timberwolves.
Mm-hmm.
So to
Yeah,
me,
for
I
sure.
think he's ripe for that next step with Miami if he goes in and does the work. So, and I feel like he's a personality type that will will buy in, and I think will be a good fit for the Heat. So, but I don't
Yeah, I
think,
think the Heat are definitely the Heat are working for the weekend right now.
yeah,
Come this off season, they're going to be a hell of a free agent destination with the foundation that they've laid for themselves. Because I mean, they don't have a bad team right now. It's just not it's not what you think of as like a heavy playoff contender. Although not the more that we're talking about it, I feel like countering myself and say like, well, did they technically get better for this year because Jimmy was dragging them down with his protests on and off the court?
well, yes, in that, but if you were to take him pre-protests when he's healthy, like start of the year, Jimmy, that they were expecting, to me, I would say no. But yeah, if you're gonna have pouting, like throwing tantrums, Jimmy Butler versus that you're suspending 3 games at a time and then plays 2 games half-heartedly versus getting an Andrew Wiggins who'll buy in and won't speak up. You're never going to hear him talk to the media. Like he's quiet as can be. So to me, that's a fit for what they're looking for. But on court, they're not better this year.
All right. Well, we can keep going on the line here since we're in the losers column. I was gonna mention the Phoenix Suns, who, boy, were they swinging for the fences, and they they got the first base on an error, maybe. I mean, ultimately, what they ended up adding was Cody Martin and Vasily Micic from the Hornets. They were able to get off the Yusuf Nurkic contract, which was one of the big things that they were trying to do, if not being able to get a star like Jimmy Butler. I mean, I think ultimately they did not make their squad better. In one of the craziest things that they had to do, or that they did along the way, was trade an unrestricted future first, which, I mean, the Suns are like a high, like a large market free agent destination, but holy moly, did they give up a really good first 2031 for 3 of like the worst possible first round picks, like almost second round picks in exchange. When they made that deal, I think I even texted you like, oh, there's a big trade coming. The Suns got something brewing. You know, like, why trade 1 first round pick that's worth a lot for 3 that are knowingly not worth that much unless you have the next trade already in the bag? And then nothing happened. I mean, they literally just dumped a trade asset for, I don't know, maybe good players, but yeah, really disappointing for the Suns. They are continuing this journey in limbo with an untradeable contract, arguably the worst contract in the league with Bradley Beal. You know, there's a chance that Katie is not on that squad next year, and now they're scrambling to figure out what to do with Devin Booker, if they even have anything left to build around him with. So again, I know we're talking about this year specifically, but you know, they are sitting just outside the play-in, half game behind the Warriors, and I don't know how they intend to make a run down the stretch and make themselves a better team. So sorry, Suns fans, not a good look. Bad team management over the past couple of years. And unfortunately, beyond this year, we may see some really harsh downstream effects as a result.
No, well put. I have nothing more on the Suns. They're getting their butts kicked right now.
So staying in LA, or going back to LA rather, the Clippers. The Clippers who are currently sitting 6th in the West, and which is even surprising as we say it now. I realize that they haven't been quite as dominant recently, but they've kind of been, you know, it's hard to call them a dark horse of a team because they do have a lot of big names on that squad. But, you know, Ivica Zubac has looked awesome this year. Norm Paul, who is starting to look a little bit more human, has obviously had a breakout year for himself. But yeah, they were able to get Bogdan Bogdanovic from the Hawks, Drew Eubanks, who was a pretty decent pickup, and then pick up Ben Simmons in the buyout market. None of that really moves the needle for me. You know, I think of them essentially as the same team before naming all those names. I mean, certainly more depth at like the 4 and 5 position. Maybe more shooting if Bogdan ends up looking a little bit more like himself to close the rest of the year. But essentially, the biggest thing that happened to the Clippers before the trade deadline is acquiring Kawhi Leonard, who is playing for them again, and you know, looking all right. He's looking pretty good. But yeah, that's all I have to say about the Clippers.
No, that's funny. I actually would disagree. I like the Bogdanovich pickup. I think he's a good depth shooter. And for me, I actually, when I saw the Ben Simmons stuff come down, I thought it was a great fit. To me, when you have somebody like whether it's Harden and Kawhi that will get the ball to be able to distribute the ball to them, to me, I think is something that's going to help them. He's not looking to score. Like, to me, I think that's something that'll benefit.
Boy, is he not. Is
Those
he
guys
not
that are
looking
on
to
the
score?
floor. So I think that's going to be, to me, I think it's going to help the Clippers be better.
Well, I mean, as time goes on with Ben Simmons, I I don't know. I mean, the guy, like, I've never seen somebody who's so talented be so afraid of a basketball. I mean, talk about unselfish. I think it's more selfish than that. It's like he doesn't want the ball in his hands so badly that he's trying to give it up to anybody. He will skillfully take the
It's
ball down
weird
the
to
court,
watch.
and as soon as he crosses half court, is like looking to pass. I kind of see the same thing. I hate to say this. I hate to drop this kind of shade right now. I kind of see the same thing in Josh Giddey a little bit with this Bulls squad. It's like you think of them as these good point guards, and because it's like, oh, they're tall guys, high level passers, racking up like 7-8 assists a game. That's pretty good, right? It's like, well, yeah, but they're looking to pass maybe too much as opposed to create. So we'll see. You'll see. Certainly, having a guy who can handle the ball, who can be that extra passer, who's 6'10" and could maybe guard their best player for stretches, it could be a win for the Clippers. But listen. I've been optimistic. I've been trying to be optimistic. Rather, I've been optimistic about being optimistic on Ben Simmons for too long that it's just I've given up. The fatigue is there. But anyway, the last team I have on my list here is a team who, I mean, I think ultimately made a good move because they were able to get a lot out of this trade. But in terms of teams that we think as possible playoff contenders, the Sacramento Kings, who in the effort to trade off De'Aaron Fox, picked up Zach Lavine, Jonas Valanciunas, and Jake LaRavia, previously mentioned Jake LaRavia. So, I mean, ultimately, especially with all the draft capital that they got, not a bad bag for being involved in this trade deadline. But as a team who is currently sitting ninth in the West, in that sea of end of the play-in teams right now, doesn't really move the needle for me. I think their offense is going to continue to be interesting to watch. I think in general they're going to be a fun team to watch still. I think Domantas Sabonis is going to like the options that he has out there. I think it's going to give Malik Monk a chance to pop a little bit more. Jake LaRavia, for that matter. But yeah, I think if they stay in the play-in,
sounds like they get better when you're
if they
saying
fall
that.
out of the play-in, though, if they fall out of the play-in, I would be equally unsurprised. So, I mean, sure, make the argument for them being better, but
I was
not
going to
super
say,
excited about it.
you're the one wearing all the Bulls stuff. It's an end of an era. And so.
Right. Oh! Stop it, Samson! Did you not get the memo?
We're watching Zach Lavine highlights right now, by the way, all of which are extremely sexy.
I apologize for the audio.
Everything he does is so fun to watch. There's no question about it. Except when he makes mistakes.
Take it in.
The highlights are very high. There's no question about it. You can say the same thing about DeMar DeRozan. He's once again his teammate.
Absolutely. But he spent 8 years in Chicago, so that's why I think
right nowadays
has to be celebrated. He was one of the amazing players to watch. He wasn't at the D-Rose level, but to me, he was, having seen what I saw in Minnesota, knowing what he was going to come and bring to Chicago, it was fun to watch him play. And
absolutely.
Hopefully it doesn't go hidden in Sacramento out in the West Coast. So hopefully he still gets some highlights and that people are still paying attention to him.
Yeah, absolutely. No. I mean, he really he really came into his own as a player in Chicago, and became a fairly dominant scorer. And especially this year. This year, you can kind of tell he's. I don't know if he was playing with a chip on his shoulder, trying to improve his trade value, trying to get out of Chicago, or really just looking like a more refined version of himself. Now that I don't have his age pulled up in front of me, but I know that he is, in his late 20s here. He's well within his prime. But yeah, no, I mean, I'm excited to see what he does for the rest of his career. I think, anything that comes to him, he's earned it. Maybe it wasn't the most favorable contract they signed with the Bulls, which is why it was so hard to get off. If he's 29, my bad. He's 29 years old. But yeah, I'm excited to see what he does for this year and years to come. But again, not moving the needle for me when it comes to the Sacramento Kings. So
All right.
that is the end of my list. I don't know if you have any objections, anything to add, or if there's something else that
Nothing
you want
as
to
of now. All right. Well, I got one other thing I guess we can kind of wrap before we get into some other things. One of the big news stories that happened within the last day was that arbitrators have ruled that Alex Rodriguez and Mark Lore are now the majority owners of the Minnesota Timberwolves. So Glenn Taylor is now out, and A-Rod and Mark Lore are now officially or I shouldn't say officially, according to the courts, they are the owners. They still have to get the NBA board of governors approval to actually be set as the owners of the team. So that's the last hurdle. But that was a pretty big one because it had been in court for almost a year. I want to say that they were fighting this. Or I should say that Glenn Taylor was fighting this. So, but that appears to be over. And so now they can kind of move forward with however they feel that they're going to run the team. And after last year's success, hopefully they can continue kind of going off of the big trade that happened. We'll see where this team is going. So it's a very curious case, but
as a T-Wolves fan, I was gonna say, as a T-Wolves fan, are you excited about this?
No, I think you get out of old mindsets that I've kind of have seen. It's funny because pre-Glenn Taylor, like I have even connections back to the old ownership of Harv and Marv Wolfstein. They used to own the health clubs that my dad used to work at, and so I've met like Christian Leitner and a few other Timberwolf players used to come and play basketball at our gyms. So, but no, as a Timberwolves fan, it makes me excited that there's not that Alex Rodriguez is youth, but I think it's a different mindset. To me, it's a new way of looking at things. And to me, just kind of the changes that they've made, it's like, okay, I can see that they're trying to be able to work with their superstar and kind of build around him and do right by him. And that's what you want. And so as long as the team stays in Minnesota, and it seems like that should be the case, then yeah, I'm going to be happy.
Yeah. One of the more peculiar stories in recent NBA history, just somebody trying to sell a team when they thought the stock was high, and then watching the stock price rise and saying, no, actually, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. I mean, I'm sure that there was more of a money issue than that was holding things up, but I'm sure it was far more complex than that. But yeah, it kind of seemed like a takesies backsies type of move here.
That's at least what it seemed like to me and people I've talked to. So, but yeah. Any thoughts on the All-Star game? We got like Team Shaq, Team Kenny, in the way that it's set up.
I mean, I don't have the lineups in front of me. I think the setup's kind of cool. I still feel like the only thing that's going to propel the All-Star selection players to really try is just trying not to lose to the young stars, the rookie team. Yeah. So because it's going to be like a 5-on-5 tournament style between 4 teams, and I don't know. but then again, I can also see them just kind of like letting the young guys win and not caring. I have been a long time proponent of either a 3-on-3 tournament or even better, just getting rid of any sort of 5-on-5 NBA action altogether during All-Star weekend and going purely skills challenges. So keep the dunk contest, keep the 3-point contest, keep whatever you call the skills challenge. But I would love for the main event to just be like a King of the Hill or King of the Court rather style 1-on-1. I mean.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean the amount of videos you see out there of summer workouts of, I mean, granted it was like more like KD when he was in his prime and stuff, but like KD, Paul George, all those guys go on one. I mean, there's a famous one out there where Kyrie's the one. He must have been hurt, but he was the guy passing in the ball, at the top of the block, and they were just going 1-on-1, and it was awesome to watch. It was awesome to watch KD just score 20 times in a row on a different guy, just cycling in and out because literally nobody could stop his turnaround. And so I would love to see something like that. I think that would be like a low impact way for guys to actually try. And it would be fun for them. And I hate that they keep trying to go with like a 5-on-5 format style of basketball. I mean, it's a way for all guys to be playing at the same time, but at least King of the Court, you cycle a guy in, I don't know if you've ever played King of the Court before, but I'm sure a lot of people listening know what I'm talking about. But essentially it's a 1-on-1 style where if you're playing defense and you don't make a stop, the next guy comes in. And if you do make a stop, then you're the one who gets to shoot that time. So it would just a constant cycle of people coming in and out. So I think it would be a good way to still get a lot of guys on the court. I don't know. That's my thought on that.
No, I think that there's some sort of way to do that. And yeah, I played competitive basketball on teams for about 12 years. So yes, I've played King of the Court.
Well, I assumed you knew what I was talking about, but just in case anybody who hasn't, viewers who hasn't played King of the Court before, I mean, pick whatever version you want, but I think purely skills challenges all weekend long. Like that's what the whole All-Star weekend should be. Just highlighting what these guys can do with a basketball in their hands.
No, I kind of like that. It's funny because I go back to, and I just watched it for whatever reason. I didn't save it and record it to play for you, but it was, I want to say it was like the 2005 All-Star game. And the comment was like what the last time the All-Star game was played as if it meant something. And it was Iverson and Jordan and Kobe and like all of these guys and KG. And the game was competitive all the way through the fourth quarter. Like guys were playing.
Well, it wouldn't have been 05, by the way. It would not have been 05.
Well, it was one of those years with all of those players. And so to me, it was like that time is of that time. We're not going to have those same players. So I definitely think like I miss having that. And I wish it was a 5-on-5 that would actually be like a real competitive game that they're obviously not going to go full bore, but like that's going to mean something, whether it's you put money on the line or whatever it might be. But I don't see that with this generation of players. So that's why I think maybe your idea is I like the 3-on-3 tournament because then they can kind of get in their own little cliques and can kind of be their guys versus maybe whatever stigma they have from playing on the team. So, whoa, just saw a player. Triple J just threw somebody on the ground. Tyus Jones. So I think the skills thing is something that they should expand on, or do something crazy and they play a flag football game or some. It's like they do a different sport or something like. But people are going to watch just because they're celebrity.
You want it to be something. Yeah. Well, you want it to be something that they try at that's low impact because no guy wants to run up and down the court and play real defense. Yeah. Well, okay, let's try to keep it basketball. But yeah, no, none of these guys want to like play like high impact defense because the risk of injury. I mean, and plus during this whole week, they're just like they're mentally checked out, and I don't blame them. I would do the same thing. I don't think they're wrong to feel that way. I think there's too much skin in the game these days. There's too much money in the NBA these days to make it this like risky thing. Not to say that in any format of basketball that a guy can't get hurt, but just decreasing the likelihood I think is just put it in their favor so that they actually make it something they care about.
Yep. Anything else? Otherwise, we can move on to some trivia.
Let's do trivia. Let's embarrass me yet again.
All right, this is your trivia by T4 Medical for all of your medical professional needs. T4 Medical. So this week, as I mentioned to you before the show, it is season leaders. So I am curious to know, and this is the season leader for single games. So single game leaders this season for each major statistical category. Can you tell me who's got the most points in a single game this season?
Oh, it bothers me that I don't actually know this because I do know, I'm almost positive rather, that somebody dropped 60 this year. And I can't remember who did it.
Correct.
And there's only been one person. There's only been one person who's dropped a 60-point game this year, and it's killing me. I know it's not Shea, whose new favorite number rather is 50, because he's done it now 3 times in his career in the past few weeks.
His high is 54.
Was it LaMelo Ball?
LaMelo scored 50. This is high.
I'm pretty sure it was against the Wizards, too.
I have no idea who it's against. It's 60.
Was it Giannis?
Giannis had 59.
Who dropped 60? Excuse me, folks.
Recently traded.
Who? Recently traded. Oh, was it Luka? No.
Other big trade.
Was it
Mr.
De'Aaron Fox?
De'Aaron Fox.
It must have been.
60.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
All right, and we'll buzz through these other
Nice,
ones.
nice.
The first one should be pretty easy. Most assists in a game this season.
Oh.
What's funny is I saw the number 2 one live this season.
Trae Young?
Trae Young, 22 assists. Alfred Payton, 21, number 2.
That's right.
But then Trae Young has 3, 4, 5. He's done 20 twice and 19. Cade Cunningham's on the list there twice as well. Most rebounds in a game this season.
Top guesses. Demonis Sabonis.
Correct. 28. Victor is in second with 23, and Jokic with 22, as well as Karl Anthony Towns. Actually, they've both done it twice, Jokic and Karl Towns. Most steals in a game. This one you should know.
Yeah, I'm just blanking on the name for a second. Dyson Daniels.
Correct. But he's tied with somebody. Can you name who he's tied with? Who also has 8
Wemby?
steals in a game. No, Wemby's not on the list. In a former town that you used to live in.
Was it Tyrese Maxey?
You got the right team, wrong player.
Paul George. I thought he had 8 steals.
Kelly Oubre
Ooh.
has 8 steals in a game.
I bet he has 8 steals on the season, too.
Most blocks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most Victor
Here, wait,
Wembanyama.
let me add to this. Most, and name me the other 2 guys on this list. Because Victor is 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, and 8.
Right. Who else is blocking it?
I'll say one's. I'm gonna hand off to you. He was just injured.
Anthony Davis.
Nope.
Oh, dang. Daniel Gafford?
He had 7 blocks in a game.
Nice. Who else is up at the standings in blocks?
The other one, I've never heard of this guy. So I'm going to kind of give it to you because I have no idea. Donovan Clingan had 8 blocks with the Blazers.
Oh, no kidding. Donovan Clingan. We talked about it. He was one of the lottery picks this year. He was the Blazers' first pick.
All right, and then the last one.
Coming out of
Most.
Gonzaga? Is he coming out of Gonzaga? Is that right?
You're asking the wrong person.
Anyway, go ahead.
The last trivia. The last one. The most threes made in a game. It's a 4-way tie with 10.
Oh, jeez. All right. Well, is Steph on that list?
Nope.
Oh, well then, I'm going to be guessing for a while here. Is LaMelo Ball on that list?
He's not. Who's shooting the most threes this season?
Oh, Anthony Edwards.
That's one.
Mm.
If it's not Steph, it's
LeBron.
Shooting
Klay
threes.
Thompson. Well, LeBron just had a big 3-point shooting game.
I was leaning it toward Damian Lillard.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. I would have gotten there eventually.
The other two, I don't think you're going to get. So I'm going to, instead of sit here for 10 minutes and let you guess,
please.
CJ McCollum and Tyler Hero were the other two.
Well, I may have gotten Tyler Hero.
So yeah.
I don't think I would have gotten CJ. Cool.
Those are your season leaders, and that's your trivia by T4 Medical.
Serving all your Central and Western North Carolina skilled nursing facility needs. I had to expand on that a little bit. Sorry.
And if you have any questions or comments about that, please put them down in the comments, and Bobby will reach out. Well, I guess that's going to wrap it up, unless you've got any other basketball tidbits to push us towards 2 hours, or we can get in and go to sleep and start watching this Memphis Suns game if you're going to go to bed.
Yeah, I'm okay with the Grizzlies Phoenix lullaby here. I mean, yeah, I could always keep talking your ear off. Maybe we'll have to do another like deep dive All-Star game.
We got to break down the teams and the format before.
Yeah. We'll have to do something during the break. During the break.
Of course.
But yeah, we will. We'll have to be coming at you guys soon as we continue to watch all these players on their new squads. A lot of exciting things to happen down the stretch here. Absolutely.
Make sure you go and watch all of our content on YouTube. Just like the NBA, the G League is now on an all-star break. You can go check out the Windy City Bulls versus the Maine Celtics highlights that I did from their last game. And hopefully some more coming up. We've got a couple of games next in about a week or two. So, yeah. We will definitely be back with more, and we will break down whether it's the All-Star game or just kind of do some maybe mid-season grades and kind of go from there. So thank everybody if you're still watching. We appreciate you sticking through and listening to us go on and on about basketball and all the things that we love. So until next time, I'm Ronnie. That's Bobby. This is the Bucket Bros, and we will see you guys next time.
Ciao.